On this channel, we often focus on how the brain in dreams responds to emotional content, trauma, and other sort of psychological disruptions. But what if I just hit you in the head? How would your dreams respond? Welcome to the channel. My name is Jesse Lyon, licensed mental health counselor, certified clinical hypnotherapist, and a dream interpreter. And today we're going to explore how your dreams will be responding to traumatic brain injuries. What can you expect, and why does the brain respond in these certain ways? So let's get to it. I always start my journey looking into this information with PubMed or some other reputable online resource where you're actually getting peer-reviewed journal articles. Typed in, very simply, how brain injuries affect dreams. And I got some really interesting stuff. The first thing I want to look at is this study posted in 2020, so pretty recent, within the past 3 years. So an interesting conclusion happened here, an interesting result. Women reported more negative affect, maladaptive coping, depressive symptoms, and anxiety symptoms than men. So what do we mean by that? Negative affect, that means they were sad or they didn't feel good. Affect means emotion, so negative emotions. Maladaptive coping, and that just means like instead of going outside getting some sunshine, they would hit like the bottle of tequila or something like that. Depressive symptoms, we understand that, and anxiety symptoms. But those who identified as female in the study experienced it a lot more than men did. Now, men had an interesting experience. They experienced nightmares. Those who experienced nightmares reported more substance use than men without nightmares. So if you are a man with nightmares, you are more likely to abuse substances. Now, this was not a difference seen in women. Let me zoom in on this so you can see it a little bit better. This was not an experience seen in women. So women did not have a difference in substance abuse based on their nightmares. But women experienced nightmares reported more impulsivity. So they're more impulsive than women without nightmares, a difference not seen in men. So women who have nightmares are more impulsive. Men who have nightmares, they don't have any difference in impulsivity, but they do have an increase in substance abuse. So what's the conclusion? Nightmares post-traumatic brain injury, so nightmares after an injury, are associated with more neurobehavioral symptoms. So you're going to have more problems. However, symptom patterns associated with nightmares may differ by genders. Nightmares may be a symptom of or contribute to sleep disruptions. So you're going to have trouble sleeping after a traumatic brain injury, and they may indicate other conditions like PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Supremely interesting. Now there's kind of a theory here for me. Now we know, and you've seen this on my channel, that there are two things your brains are trying to do during dreams, right? One is to create new neural networks. That's where a lot of the healing comes from, and a lot of healing similar to psychedelic medication, right? So when you're experiencing psychedelics, your brain is creating new neural connections, new wiring inside your brain. That's the same process that happens when you dream. So new connections inside your brain. But then number two, it's deepening existing connections. And this is where athletes, it's so important that they get good dream sleep because they'll learn to jump higher, run faster, dribble the ball better, all these kinds of things that I don't do with my life. Anyways, so you get better at the skills that you already know. So you learn new skills and you get better at the ones you know. Now, when you experience a brain injury, that part of your brain, experienced some trauma. It's going to have to rewire and rebuild. Just kind of like if I break my arm's going to have to heal and grow back together. Well, your brain's going to have to heal and grow back together. So my theory going into this research today was that you're going to experience some very weird dreams, kind of like fever dreams, because your brain is creating so many new connections by trying to build that part of your brain back that got hurt, that you're going to experience some weird connections and some weird dreams subsequently. So let's keep looking into it. Let's see what the research says, right? So we go to this one, right? The use of dreams as a psychotherapeutic technique with brain injured patients. Our experience from this study indicated that it is possible to increase and enrich dream activity in quantity and in substance in the course of treatment. This approach can affect all the components of the personality which have been in regression after injury. So what they're showing in this study is that by going through a process of improving and enriching, making better these people's dreams, it actually improves their recovery from the traumatic brain injury. It also is really encouraging here. Dream analysis does not require complex cognitive abilities. So for you to look into your dreams and to understand what they mean and get some therapeutic benefit from it, you don't have to be an Einstein, right? And the therapist doesn't have to be an Einstein either. It's just the process of talking about it and enriching your dreams improves the outcome. Now, off of PubMed, there is some interesting information and details here. How does brain injury affect sleep? Sleep can be affected by brain injury in many different ways. It may be that there is damage in areas of the brain that are directly responsible for sleep activity. So if you damage the part of your brain directly responsible for sleep, you're going to experience some differences. And actually, as we get over to some of these other ones, you'll see that if the area of your brain that was damaged is responsible for your visual processing, you're going to have some big impacts in your dreams, maybe even not dreaming as much or even at all if those areas of your brain are affected by the brain injury. Injury to any part of the brain can result in a range of physical, cognitive, emotional, and behavioral effects. Remember, dreams come from our emotions, they come from our senses, and so any effect that the injury is going to have on your emotions, your senses, your body are going to be reflected in your dreams as well. One of the things that we do know, and one of the things that this article talks about, is unusual dreams and nightmares. And this is where my theory kind of is confirmed, right? Some survivors report having unusual and vivid dreams after the brain injury, which may leave them feeling confused upon awakening. Nightmares can be experienced more regularly, and we're going to get to a study about that actually here in a minute, especially if someone is experiencing trauma related to the brain injury. So it kind of confirms what we thought. Your brain's going to be rewiring, and whatever was damaged is going to be focused on and changed in the way that you experience your dreams. If you can't hear as well, if you can't see as well, if you can't smell as well, that's going to be reflected in your dreams. Your brain's going to process those injuries while you sleep. And if they've been damaged, the type of dreams that you have, if you're a very visual dreamer, you might not have very visual dreams afterwards. And because your brain is rewiring, it's going to be strange. You're going to have some unusual and vivid nightmares. Now, second part, right? You have to address the anxiety, the fear, and the trauma that happens after a brain injury. If you experience these things, one of the things that we know, whether it's emotional or physical trauma, your brain is going to try and keep you safe from that trauma happening again in the future. So for example, right, let's say that I get assaulted on the way to the car. I will probably have a dream about that night and several nights thereafter because my brain's thinking, whoa, we did not expect that to be a possibility. I was not expecting to be jumped on the way back to the car. So how can I keep myself safe from that happening again? And the brain rehearses that experience over and over and over. So let's say you get in a car crash that causes a traumatic brain injury. You will probably experience a lot of car crash dreams after that because your brain's like, could we have turned right instead of left? Could we have slowed down? Should we have sped up? What happens if I was driving this car? What happens if someone was sitting next to me? Going through all these scenarios, rehearsing them in an attempt to find ways to keep yourself safe. But let's get back to it, right? Here's another interesting study that I think should be addressed. 1988. It is commonly believed that patients following severe head injury tend to dream less than before the injury. In order to evaluate this assumption, 51 married head injury patients were interviewed about the frequency and content of their dreams before and after the injury. So there was an assumption that you're going to dream less after a brain injury. Is that true? This is what this is setting out to find. The results indicate that the overall incidence of dreams in the late post-traumatic phase, confusing, was similar to the pre-injury area. Basically, no change. It seemed that the amount of dreams you have before and after an injury stays consistent. Now, threatening dreams were almost significantly more frequent after the injury. So scary dreams, threatening dreams, like we just talked about, happen much more after an injury. And the reported incidence of dreams with sexual manifest content decreased significantly post-injury. So two interesting things. More threatening dreams and less sex dreams. I think the brain is re-diverting resources to processing the scary stuff rather than thinking about creating new life with sex, right? It's like, hey, oh my gosh, we got to make sure to keep ourselves safe. We can't think about having babies and having a good time right now because bad things happen. So let's process that more. Some of these research articles have been based on a very old text here from 1951. So let's zoom in on this, right? Cessation of dreaming after brain injury, right? So here's the assumption that this is based on, that you're going to, dream less. So they did 51 married people. This is where some of the assumption comes from 1951, and it goes on to talk about these case reports. Now, here's the thing, and they are making this claim that you are going to dream less after a brain injury, but they're only basing it on 1, 2, 3 reports. This one was based on 51 interviewed individuals. So this study, I think, makes a lot more sense. They found no difference in the frequency of dreams. This one says that it was less. And if you look at it, when they talk about the summary, they're looking at a very specific type of brain injury. So it's almost like this study with only these 3 individuals was extrapolated to be a little bit more than it really should have been. If you have damage to your visual processing, you're going to probably dream less, and that makes sense. Depression, so a reduction in dreaming, was associated with impaired visual imagination and memory in the waking state. It is tentatively suggested that depression of dreaming and visual imagery in consequence of brain injury may be regarded as a disillusion in some respects, analogous to aphasia, right? And aphasia is when someone struggles to communicate. They have to use pictures to communicate. Now, last thing I thought was interesting, I'm just going to throw this in here. It's a great study, 2001. Imagery rehearsal therapy for chronic nightmares in sexual assault survivors with post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm just going to throw this in here as a little fun fact. Rehearsing the dream imagery and practicing through what you've seen in your dreams, talking about it with a therapist, actually has some really, in the conclusions, imagery rehearsal therapy is brief, well-tolerated treatment that appears to decrease chronic nightmares, improve sleep quality, and decrease PTSD symptom severity. So just another attaboy for dream interpretation therapy and dream therapy altogether. Working through your dreams with a therapist has been shown to make some great improvements in traumatic brain injury and just emotional PTSD. So there you go. That's how your dreams will be affected by traumatic brain injury. And if you've had a traumatic brain injury and you have any sort of thoughts or experiences from that, I would love to know in the comments down below. Please post them down there. If you want to know more about dreams, hit subscribe, smash that button, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.